haven't talked about this yet, but you might be aware. You're probably aware. I don't know that everybody's aware, but you're probably aware because you're tapped into these kind of
Oh
things.
yeah.
There's a new Broadway play that came out about a month ago. It's not new. It's not a new play. Waiting for Godot. It's the Beckett classic.
Gatto.
And
Gatto is
okay.
the way that Alex and Keanu would very quickly correct you. It's
Yeah,
Gatto.
Alex and Keanu, because it's Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter. And you know Keanu Reeves and his oeuvre, of course, but Alex Winter, you might not know necessarily by name, but we're talking about the duo that brought us Bill and Ted. That's right. Bill and Ted have reunited as the protagonists in Waiting for Godot, Godot, whatever you want to call it. And that just strikes me as absolutely awesome. They have dispensed of the tree. There's a famous tree that is in the play that actually does not appear. At one point, they do air guitar in a nod
Yeah.
to their Bill and Ted days, which the audience seems to enjoy. And I bring this up because of waiting, because we are waiting for Austin FC to drop their roster decisions, which they have until November 26th to do. So
Yeah.
it's not like they have to do this right now, but we last year got decisions pretty quickly after the season ended for Austin FC, which was, of course, decision day. This year it was a little longer. And I just bring this up to point out that right now we are waiting for Rodot.
Oh God. Look, there's 11 days left, Phil, in the theater of absurd that we find ourselves in. Maybe something. Oh wait, what's that? What's that? A giant pile of news dropping in? Never mind. We don't care about waiting on roster decisions anymore.
Let's talk about the league.
Emergency podcast. Better did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, hell yeah, shut up, hell yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies. It is early Saturday morning. It is very early Saturday morning. We did not get to record on Friday, but we are here. Moisés, how are you doing?
Well, Phil, I've been trying my damnedest to confirm that we are in fact entering MLS 3.0 or MLS 4.0, because I could swear that about 10 years ago we were told MLS 3.0 was upon us. So
Mhm.
when Don Garber said in the State of the League address at the All-Star game that MLS was entering 3.0, a number of other league affiliated or league related people mentioned to me, didn't we do that 10 years ago? And I think
Yeah,
especially
we sure did.
in valuing a partnership with Apple, a company that is very big on its version numbering, I would think that MLS would maybe get with the program on what they're doing with their version numbering. So I titled this article that we posted yesterday, MLS 4.0. We're going to run with it,
Yep.
and they can keep insisting that it's 3.0. It's the least of various of their branding errors of recent years, and we're just going to run with it. We're definitely running into a new era of MLS. Phil, how do you feel about the shift to the European calendar as the headline major main thing that's going on here? There are so many different variables that are attached to this. Is it something that was inevitable? Is it something that you're going to have to work out some kinks with it? It's not going to be as simple as people might think? Or are you feeling like some various trolls in my mentions on social media who think that this dooms the northern teams like the Seattle Sounders and the Vancouver Whitecaps and Montreal, that this spells certain disaster for these horribly, horribly, poorly done victims of evil MLS world domination?
Well, you said inevitable, and I think inevitable is a good way to think about this because this is something that has been in the works for a while. Again, the notion that better players, easier time for sporting directors is driving this. I mean, I think that's valid, and I think that that's a good thing. I do think that having games in northern climates in the winter is going to be tricky and troublesome, and they probably won't do that. They'll probably align the schedule to where most, if not all, of those games are happening in warmer climes during those months. But again, the calendar is a July to May calendar, so it doesn't mitigate a lot of what I was interested in, which was places like Austin, where it is roasty during the summer months, thinking that maybe that would be alleviated somewhat by I was envisioning like kind of more of an August to May or September to May calendar, but that they're going to start things in July makes it tricky and weird. So I am fine with this as an experiment. They could always go back if they needed to, but I feel like they're not going to go back. I mean, we'll roll with it. We'll see what happens. It's going to be an adjustment is what makes me curious.
The thing for me is that I think the structure of it is going to have to go this general direction where the season
Mhm.
begins in the late summer, early fall, and goes to the spring. And it lines up where, as I put in the article, in May, you have MLS playoffs happening at night, where all of everyone's favorite European teams and other teams that end their seasons in May, those matches are happening in the morning and in the afternoon. And so, what you end up having for people who follow this sport is all of their teams that they follow are aligning in terms of their calendar. And there have been critical notes about, oh, well, now they're going against this major US league and that. And to me, it's six of one, a half dozen of the other. How do you see that sort of competing for
Yeah.
eyes, competing for time, competing for people's attention aspect of this?
I mean, the NFL is king in the US, so having the playoffs shift over to May, it is going to be competing with the NBA playoffs and a few other sports, but it's not going to be the same. And again, the thing that has, I think, really stymied MLS somewhat in terms of playoff interest is just that you have this November international break. If you could fit everything in between the October and the November international breaks, I think that would make sense, keeping with the current calendar, but they don't do that. They insist on the best of three first round games. And so now, for example, you're going to have these second round games that are happening a month after the playoffs started and over a month from decision day. So that gets a little ridiculous. So I do think that if the calendar allows them to compress the schedule so you can have the playoffs happen within a 3 to 4 week window rather than the big sprawling like 7 to 8 week mess that it is now. I think that's good. I like that aspect of the schedule a lot.
Yeah, to me, one of the biggest aspects of this, and it's something that a lot of the social media chatter, and there has to be some outrage or another around any major news story of any kind, sports or otherwise, right? But the big outrage came from people who purported to take the side of, won't you think of the poor, neglected northern clubs? This will destroy them. This is that. I'm sure that Saputo was in there effectively wanting MLS to build him a new stadium. He has a stadium in Montreal that is not climate adapted,
No.
is not climate adapted, is one of the least spending of ownerships across the league. And
Mhm.
I fully expect that he was one of, if not the only major holdout. One of the things that we saw in the official release, quotes from Chicago Fire head coach Greg Berhalter, general manager of LA Galaxy, which isn't as affected by the winter scheduling aspect of things, but then also David Lee, president of soccer operations and general manager of SKC. They got comments that they put out there from the front office of Minnesota. It feels to me like, just looking at the windows of time in which all of this stuff is going to happen, taking it from the mouths of some of the sporting operations of these affected northern clubs, it's something that this 2 year
Mhm.
process going back to 2023 has very much taken in mind, of figuring out ways around that. Now, where does Leagues Cup go in all this? Great question. It caused a very abrupt interruption of the very beginning of the Liga MX fall campaign, where they suspended their season right after it started. Now, are we looking at a situation where Liga MX is going to be looking at, okay, MLS wants to throw Leagues Cup into January and February?
Mhm.
And that's where that lengthy break becomes a bit less lengthy, and all of those games are hosted in southerly climates. But then you get into the issue of early February is actually arguably much worse in some of even those southern cities like Austin than January is.
Not to mention, if you have Minnesota in it, we had a U.S. game in Minnesota not too long ago where Matt Turner ended up getting frostbite as a result of playing in that. And they tried to do that strategically on purpose, which was dumb. So yeah, you're going to run into that unless you do have some Liga MX cities that are actually hosting. And I think
Yeah.
that would be an interesting spin on the tournament. I don't know if they're ever going to do that necessarily, but that would be an excuse to maybe do that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where Leagues Cup fits. And
'cause-
again, if you have the schedule that is stretching out that long, like do you really need Leagues Cup at that point? You've got maybe a more compressed version. Maybe you have the top 8 teams from each and you do like kind of a midweek thing and sprinkle it in over a few weeks, maybe early in the season.
They want it to be the MLS and Liga MX UCL so bad. It's transparent that it's what MLS and Liga MX make radically more money off of than CONCACAF Champions Cup, which that's the Confederations Cup. That's not going away. But those leagues would very much like for there to be another money-making opportunity. So it's going to be there. It's a matter of what form it takes. And I think that they did fix some stuff, but it feels to me like it can be jazzier, it can be more powerful, it can be stronger. But if they are not going to learn from the lessons of the past of how their playoffs have fundamentally not worked in some ways, if they really do end up favoring a move to something like the Australian rules football playoff system, which is the exact same kind of complicated that people complain about MLS playoffs being, I don't know how many problems they have solved for themselves in that respect, other than fixing the transfer market system issues.
And again, with Leagues Cup, not to dwell too much on that aspect of it, but also they are coming up on a World Cup year where it's going to be very difficult to shoehorn in a Leagues Cup. And then you're going to have the schedule change that's happening the year after that, where again, you're going to have this February through May mini season. And then you're going to have the regular season. And of course, we got to think about the CBA, right? So I know that we were going to talk about this, but CBA expires in January 28th. So the way that was done when it was last negotiated was that was going to carry them to the end of the season. Now it's abruptly going to end in the middle of the season. So if there's going to be a strike, then it's going to impair that season, or maybe do they decide to strike early and try to negotiate something during that mini season? Does that mini season all of a sudden become a wash? Some interesting dynamics that come up in terms of that, because that was one of the things we were hearing, is that agreement wasn't going to come until the CBA could get renegotiated, because there were concerns about that, and they just decided to charge forward with that. They're meeting in Palm Beach, Florida, and all of a sudden we've got this labor agreement that ends mid-season, which I don't know that portends well for the future.
I think you're right. And that's why right toward the top of that piece, I put in a note that it's very obvious right there in the league's official release. And the first paragraph, they note that they continue to work with the MLSPA to finalize transition details, which has all of the airs of the one of the many, many open secrets in MLS is the very frosty relationship between the MLS central government and the means of production, aka the players.
Right.
There have been these sorts of strong arm tactics for round after round of things. And this move of going ahead and pushing the schedule through from speaking with primary sources, emphasizing primary sources. And for fans who listen to this stuff and people who will chirp on social media about, okay, yeah, what sources? When we do the capital J journalism version of this, look, I didn't go to J school, you did, but doing the job as a journalist, when you cite sources, you are citing a primary source, and that you have backed up that primary source with a second source. And so when I say that based on sources that I have, and based on source reporting that other people have done, that relationship between the MLSPA and league ownership is not warm and friendly. And that is not to say that the players do not favor the change to a fall spring calendar. That is something that universally I have heard from players that yes, they want that. But various things have to be done the right way. And there are so many different aspects of it that, sure, great. It might be fine for league ownership, sporting directors across the league. They have better access to better top players and that sort of thing. But you don't have full rosters of only Leo Messi's and only Thomas Muller's. And there have to be understandings and allowances for not giving Matt Turner frostbite. That is a top line thing. As much as I found myself pushing back on some of the folks saying, oh, literally doing this schedule is impossible. All these players would much rather be playing in 105-degree heat. No, they actually would not. To a one, none of them want to be playing in inclement weather on either end of the temperature scale. But I think that you're dead right on the fact that the CBA situation and the fact that MLS just decided they're going to do a 14-game season plus playoffs and an MLS Cup in early 2027 and just assertively voted on this and decided, well, we're doing this. That very well could be, to me, the transitional needle that messed up the haystack. I'm mixing my metaphors improperly here because it's very early on a Saturday morning.
Sure.
But
Yes.
you get my meaning. Like, to me, I think we really do need to be talking about the transitional season as a theoretical transitional season. Because if there is a straw that breaks the camel's back, that's the metaphor I was grasping for. It's not that I think all of those players want to not play for 4 months, but the assertive nature of, hey, we're doing this, players hope you show up for it, to me smacks of everything that various players have said to me over years prior to reporting on the league that really does not sit well with them. And I think could be a major bone of contention.
Yeah, and things that we've heard from Ethan Finley, who is a player rep, and then
Yep.
Josh Wolf being on the committee that deals with all of the competition rules and all that. So, yeah, what do you do about schedule congestion? What do you do about expanding rosters? Like, are those things going to be factored in? Because you're going to have this transition. You're going to have essentially players playing with probably not that much of a break for a year and a half. Is what's going to be happening.
Yeah.
And that's coming off a World Cup year where there's going to be a break for most of the players, but not all of them. And then there's going to be obviously some weird schedule things that are going to be happening with that. It's going to be a bumpy ride, I think, these next few years. And you have these concerns about just player safety and injury and all of that. And just how is that going to happen while you are also trying to weld on this schedule shift, which is it's going to be disruptive to the players and their rhythms and just how they prepare during the season and off season. Like, that all changes. That's all different now.
This transitional season in early 2027, is Open Cup happening over that? I mean, USL is not changing its schedule that we know of at the moment yet. Are we looking at Open Cup is going to be happening bridging to MLS seasons going forward? Unless Open Cup changes their schedule,
Probably.
that's what's going to happen. So are we going to see 2027 be a year where, according to MLS's release, that sprint season, that reduced season, is going to determine Open Cup, Leagues Cup, all these various other things.
Right.
But traditionally, those are the months that Open Cup starts happening for MLS. Presumably, there have been, for MLS to vote on this, the Confederation has to let them do it. FIFA has to let them do it. Here's where I'm going to make this reference. Maybe the fact they had that meeting in Palm Beach, Florida, was part of them making sure that they would have that agreement.
I just thought of something here. So if you have Open Cup bridging 2 seasons, theoretically, you're going to have roster moves that are happening, like the roster moves that we're waiting for now. Let's say you've got a player that is on Austin in the 27-28 season, and then that player moves to, say, the LA Galaxy in the 28-29 season. Is that player going to be ineligible for Open Cup games since that player already represented one team?
That's a great question, and exactly why I posited that, Phil, because I had a feeling that's where your head was going to go, because that's one of those things that this complicates, where MLS is going to operate as the top flight league of this confederation, of this domestic league that now
Right.
includes Canada, the binational domestic league of MLS. But it is going to be operating. It's very much this parallel reality thing is what fascinates me about this.
Yeah.
Is MLS is going to continue to act like they do not need to do anything to accommodate Open Cup whatsoever, or anything that happens outside of MLS or that is owned by Soccer United Marketing. Even in the release, reference MLS Next Pro, that they are in conversations with them. The way that MLS talks about MLS Next Pro as a separate league, as if it's owned by other people, like as
It's
well,
not.
we remain in talks with them and so on and so forth. And it is MLS's developmental league. And it just, it almost smacks of gaslighting, honestly, is how funny that is to me. The only kind of gaslighting that is funny is MLS gaslighting, but only when you don't think about the actual people involved, namely the players, namely the fans, the intangibles, the things that aren't thought about. I really want this to go well at the end of the day. And I want to be optimistic about this. But there are those things that there are those big important questions, and then there are the dumb trivial questions. During the transitional season, is everybody going to get a one-off Adidas jersey? Or, as rumors have persisted, is MLS dropping Adidas as their exclusive jersey manufacturer in the first place? We know that they have had issues getting the quantities of certain things that they want. Are they going to let the individual clubs strike their own deals, or is MLS going to just jump wholeheartedly into the arms of Nike, who've been ruining U.S. national team jerseys for years now? Is MLS going to shift, like the Europeans, to retiring every jersey every year instead of alternating years? You wouldn't think that there's necessarily the demand for it, but if you want to go full Europe, go full Europe.
Yeah, I can't imagine that they're going to roll out a jersey that's just going to be for a 14-week season. I feel like whatever gets rolled out in 2027 is going to continue on through the 27-28 season. So that's extra pressure to get those jerseys right, because you're gonna have those for 14 extra games. Going to be interesting and weird. Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting, I think, if you did have each team have their own jersey contracts, but I don't know that MLS would necessarily give that up. But
I can't see that they could. That goes against the unified ownership. It's why they were able to get the Apple deal, which we'll talk about in a minute too. But let's jump to the Apple deal real quick, and then I want to talk about the divisional structure, the things that we know from good sourced reporting, and talk about some of the fun playoff stuff. But our friends over at the Soccer Business Podcast, Sports Business Journal, have done a bit of reporting on the Apple deal. Going back to All-Star, Simon Evans was getting some good stuff on this about how Apple wasn't thrilled with the numbers penetration. And I think, as with many things, as I've also reported on Apple in the tech sector, Apple can sometimes be their own biggest enemy in some respects. And I think what they found,
How do you mean?
What I think they found in paywalling MLS Season Pass as a separate service aside from Apple TV, from the jump, there was a lot of, wait, so I pay for Apple TV and then I need to pay another fee for this other thing. So why do I pay one price for Peacock and get the Premier League and a bunch of other NBC Universal TV stuff, and a bunch of other sports stuff, and I pay less for that one thing than I do for just MLS Season Pass or MLS Season Pass and Apple TV?
Yeah.
And this is something that has been a trend for Apple, where they go, oh, certainly people will pay for this premium thing because we're a premium brand and a premium blah, blah, blah. No, at the end of the day, if you're trying to get people to sign up for a thing, and MLS is not NBA, is not MLB, is not NFL, you've got to meet people a bit more halfway. And the production values can be great, and the commentary teams can be top notch and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if people are going, why are you dipping into my wallet twice instead of just the once? Well, now we find ourselves with a renegotiated deal where instead of ending in 2032, the current terms of the deal end in 2029. And as much as people are saying, oh, well, the Apple deal is over, the Apple deal is not over. It's been renegotiated with what I think are actually more favorable terms for MLS than maybe other companies that weren't as in it for the long haul as I am fully convinced Apple is, would want to give them. They're going to pay them extra for the transition season. They're paying them more for the remaining years on the contract. And what to me this speaks to is Apple not going, we're going to cut and run, because they have foregone their choose to nope out of it by 2027 clause. They've foregone that completely. To me, this says, okay, let's figure something out that is workable. And MLS, you guys need to show up in better ways, and we need to show up in better. They announced their F1 deal and said, yeah, it's going to be included in Apple TV. And immediately MLS fans were like, no way that I am paying extra for MLS season pass if Apple TV subscribers are getting F1 for free. And sure enough, that was part of this announcement too.
Maybe that does help grow things. The thing that has always kind of mystified me with MLS season pass and the numbers and all of that is just that your core audience, half of those people are in home stadiums every match week. So they're not watching Apple TV. They're getting to the stadium, they're watching a game in person, and then they're getting back. We are super hardcore. I mean, I will come home once the interviewing is done and all that. I'll come home and I'll get maybe like a sliver of a late West Coast game, and then wrap up happens. Even when you get to the away games where I am watching, I don't watch as much of it as I would if I was not a journalist and doing some of this work. But I think it's a good product. I like what Apple has done by and large. I'm not jazzed about winnowing the number of commenters that they've had. I do miss the days of Adrian and Michael being the voices of Austin FC and having that consistency. And we've seen a winnowing of teams. There are some good teams that are calling those games, but it's still that a lot of your core fans are not seeing that week in, week out. And maybe this grows it though. Maybe there is more curiosity. If it's just there on Apple TV and you don't have to pay extra for it, maybe that does get some more curious fans. A lot of this is about trying to grow this in the wake of the World Cup. But I don't, when I envision the World Cup coming here in 26, I imagine like much more buzz. I imagine much more excitement. I imagine that the US team was going to be in a lot better shape than they are. It kind of feels like the spike that everybody was expecting might not actually manifest.
I think you're right there. I think a lot of people were expecting the 94 effect to happen, to something that happened over 30 years ago, to have an equivalent effect in a radically different media landscape, in a radically different world overall. And I don't think that people are prepared for how much work there is still to be done. To me, I think that the two best things that Apple and MLS have done in renegotiating deals and reworking things is, one, dropping the paywall, dropping the second paywall, making it so that you're paying one price for one streaming service. And honestly, the fact that they will now have the F1 audience. I've been talking to a client, a friend who is huge into F1, could not care about soccer at all. And she has said, if you get into F1, I'll get into soccer and I'll watch MLS.
Okay.
And I think that sort of handshake deal is a piece of it. Is what else is on this thing that I'm getting, that I'm already paying for because there's going to be another season of Ted Lasso, or because I'm obsessed with Foundation, or because I watch the morning show, which gets crazier by the season, by the way. So there's that. And the other thing is Apple and Peacock doing a $15 bundle. For $15 a month, you get Apple TV, and you also get the Premier League and all the other stuff that Peacock has, Traders, a bunch of different Bravo reality series, all kinds of different things. That to me is the smartest marketing move that Apple could have made to try to drive more synergy in people just watching the stuff. Like, to your point, most MLS fans are going to their home games in the home stadiums. The two biggest things that I think would help would be not being as aggressive with the expiration of programming like wrap up. I never know when I'm going to be able to watch it, or when it's going to magically disappear into the ether. I don't know how long I have to watch it. after it goes up. It feels like it is vanishingly shorter windows of time every time. If you don't watch it live, you don't see it. And why are they producing the content if I can't watch it? And then the other aspect of it is,
and they should also have that, like, once a game ends and they do like their post interviews, it should port you magically directly to wrap up
yeah,
rather than having to hunt around and find it.
the discoverability is something that needs an overhaul in a variety of ways. And the other here, it's a little thing, maybe a little thing. Let me rewatch the games with the radio broadcasts.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That can't be that hard of a deal to strike.
Right. Yeah.
It can't be that hard of a deal to strike. And while we're wishing Phil, my greatest wish, let me watch the games with stadium audio only.
Okay.
Even if it's just the replays, even if you don't give that to people live, I get it.
Right. Yeah.
Make it available on the replays. One of the things that I loved most about various clips that I saw from the World Series were clips that would get dropped of just stadium audio from those games. Made some of those moments incredible and magical. Okay, so we have solved season pass.
We're bringing that up again.
Solved the schedule. We've solved so many things, Phil. Let's talk.
Something else just occurred to me, actually, though, real quick on this point.
Yeah.
We're going to get a lot of MLS F1 crossover, aren't we?
Huge.
In the coming years.
Huge.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to happen. So
Huge.
I think with Apple driving that, we're gonna see some synergy apparently. So
yeah, I guess I got to get
used to race cars.
It is undoubtable, and lots of MLS players are big F1 fans. They're MotoGP fans. There is a lot of that kind of synergy that is there that you don't get from Apple got 3 Major League Baseball games for Friday Night Baseball, which is cool. It's not having all of the sport. Let's talk about the divisional structure that Paul Tenorio and Tom Bogert have reported on. And we could rattle through all of the split ups and everything, but it's in the article. But the one thing that I did want to highlight
is look at the article. Yeah.
Go read the article. Since we're an Austin focused podcast, the division that speculatively it is assumed that Austin will be part of will include Houston, Dallas, San Diego, and both LA teams, especially the one that plays in Carson, California, which is not Los Angeles. So that's cool. That's all well and good. And the way that the expected spread of these lays out is that of the 5 divisions, 2 of them have all West teams, 2 of them have all East teams. And the Midwest one, the one in the middle, is the Jack in the Box Munchie Meal Halvesy Fries, where you've got 3 West teams, 3 East teams. SKC, St. Louis, and Minnesota from the West, Chicago, Columbus, and Cincinnati from the East. The nice little parallel of that. It feels nice that you've got one crossover division and then the others stick to these regions and rivalries. And frankly, if you ask me, that Midwest division is a better regional combination of some of those teams. Did Columbus really need to play Montreal twice every year?
Right.
Was anybody clamoring for that?
With those divisions, just to explain this a little bit, to unpack this a little bit more. So with the divisions, they are going to play home and away every year. So you are gonna have those rivalries maintained, right? If that reporting is true, and again, we do have this Southwest division that brings Southern California and Texas together, then you've got those games that you're used to clamoring for, right? Obviously, Galaxy, bit of a rivalry with Austin, LAFC, bit of a rivalry with Austin. So those things get to maintain and continue. And then you play every other team once every other year. So you get, and again, we talked about this a little bit, just idea of home and away consistency. Hopefully that happens. You know that every other year you get an away trip to Montreal or to Chicago, and when you can plan for that and get that squared away a little bit farther out. So I think that's good. I think that's an exciting development. And the other thing too is if you expand a league to 32 teams and you do 8 4-team divisions, you can still do that kind of arrangement with the division teams playing twice and then with everybody else playing once. So I think the door is open a little bit to expansion to that. But again, I to me, that tells me that they're not going to move past 30 for a while if they're making that kind of arrangement, making that kind of
Yeah.
change. They could do it, they could move to 32, but to me, it seems like they're going to park on 30 for a while, probably as a result of doing that. But I think it's good. I think it's interesting. I think it's innovative. And then we had a bunch of speculation about what the playoffs could look like. And yes, it could be more teams in the playoffs, but it could be done in a way that I think makes it interesting and mirrors more what the NBA has evolved into with their playoff structure.
Yeah, the divisional structure is something that it's almost like people who followed MLS for a long time and have been very, very used to East West. A little bit of it
Hmm.
is breaking a sort of Stockholm syndrome where it's like, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be like this, guys. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to
Right.
be East West. It doesn't have to be, will my team ever play this other team in the same league that they are in? The kind of thing that
Hmm.
like British content creators on TikTok will make reels making fun of things that just seem insane. And it's wonderful to me that in a couple years time the whole East West thing will be a thing of the past. Phil, will All Star ever go back to East West? Guess what? It can't anymore because it doesn't exist. It's just not a
No,
thing.
no, it can't.
The days of
you could have,
East
you could
West
have,
All Star are over.
yeah, you could have the five divisions go off against each other and kind of like five-a-side pickup games. Like just have mini goals all over the field and have the teams
Good.
rotate in and out.
You know, nothing like, I don't know, like MLS instituting a draft among the divisions for two teams or something like that. If they
Right, right.
simplify
Yeah,
a bunch of things, they got to find some new complicated thing to do.
sure.
So I think the divisional structure, unified table, I don't think anybody's really complaining about it. What I do want to talk about is something that we didn't dig super deep in the article about, but you left this glorious table that was
Hmm.
based on a proposed evolutionary version of where at present 18 teams are considered in the playoffs.
Yep.
People will argue about this. They'll say that no, the people in the playing games don't get. Okay,
Mm.
okay, okay. We're gonna leave that aside for a minute. There are 18
Period.
teams currently involved in the MLS playoffs presented by Audi. And the way that works is there are a couple of play-in games, a total of 4 teams, 2 games. Those games determine who gets the last couple spots. So what I put in the
Mhm.
article was, what if under this new divisional structure, where we are assuming that the winners of each division are guaranteed actual playoffs, they are not playing a play-in
Mhm.
game, they are not in any sort of wild card situation, they are in the playoffs. And then let's assume that that instead of involving 18 teams, we're going to involve 20 total teams, including the play-in games. And the reason that I
Mhm.
propose this is only 2 play-in games, I think, doesn't make the play-in games exciting enough. And so
Right.
here's how we involve 20 teams. We take those 5 division champs.
Mhm.
We add in the 7 next most points in the unified league table, the glorious one table to rule them all. And then
Mhm.
after those 12 teams, the next 8 teams have to play 4 play-in games.
Yep.
And Phil, I wanted you to take us through the way that you figured out the seating for how this would have worked using the results of the 2025 table, because to me, it's absolutely fascinating. And also, frankly, if we went with this sort of straight knockout playoff table, I think it would have produced a more interesting version of the 2025 playoffs than we actually got.
Yeah. So what you've got is the 8 teams that would have been in the playoff teams do include Austin. So you'd have Dallas and Portland, you'd have Chicago and San Jose, you'd have Austin and the Red Bulls, and then you'd have Orlando and Real Salt Lake playing into those brackets to face the top 4 teams. So in Austin's case, if they beat the Red Bulls, they would go on to play FC Cincinnati, and then they're in a bracket where they might end up against Miami or LAFC, so or Nashville or the Sounders. So yeah, so all of a sudden you've got a little bit of unpredictability to it because obviously right now with West and East playoffs, the way that you've got that set up, you know who your top teams are going to be and what you have to do to get through it. In this format where it is one table, like you don't have a certainty about that heading into decision day that you would like normally. Like if the result shifts somebody from third to fourth, that team is in a whole new half of the bracket. I think it's interesting. So I mean, you've got a scenario where you've got, again, Inter Miami and LAFC, rather than facing off in a final, they would face off, just depending on your semantics, like a second or a third round.
The other dynamics of this, and I'm really, really glad that you did this because I did not have remotely the brain space to figure this out. Let's say that this is what Verde All Day is proposing as the new playoff format.
Yes.
So think of the play-in games, the wild card round. That is round one. Okay. Like Phil said, Dallas versus Portland, Chicago versus San Jose, Austin versus Red Bulls. Ugh. How many times have we seen that? It's not super exciting, right? Orlando versus Real Salt Lake. The matchups could be more boring, right? But where they're interesting, as you alluded to with what Austin's potential path was looking like, jumping up to Dallas versus Portland, the winner of that would have gone to, lucky them, play the Philadelphia Union. And then the winner of that match would play the winner of Minnesota versus NYC in the second round. The second round is Minnesota versus NYC. And let's say that it ends up being, I don't know, Philly, Minnesota. Okay. Then jumping down to the next little tier, the winner of Chicago, San Jose plays San Diego, which there'd be incredible energy if it had been San Jose, San Diego. And Chicago versus San Diego, also a really interesting matchup in the second round, where when things are divided east-west, in the old way of doing things, you hope for a really interesting matchup literally at the end of the table in the final. And instead you're getting that literally in the second round. And then Vancouver playing the Crew, the winner of that plays the winner of San Diego and Chicago or San Jose. Jumping down below the Austin rung of the ladder, the winner of Orlando RSL plays Miami. Okay. And
if that's Orlando, you've got Tropic Thunder,
There you go. Exactly. And right under that, you have LAFC and Nashville playing each other, where you have this kind of UCL level group of death kind of thing going on, where you're like, Miami, LAFC, and Nashville are all in the second round, and at least one of those teams is not making it into round three, the quarterfinals.
Yeah, so you probably don't get three decision day games repeating into the playoffs like you did this year.
Exactly. That's the other magic of this. And I wish I could say that we came up with it, but this is just a simple playoff format that already exists. And applying it to this new unified table situation with this setup, which is not some sort of unique playoff thing that we came up with ourselves. It's a simple knockout tournament just applied to the new unified table and using the 2025 table results. You'd be looking at a quarterfinal that could be Miami versus LAFC, Miami versus Nashville, which Miami versus Nashville was first round in the actual 2025 MLS playoffs. But what if you see Miami versus LAFC in the quarterfinals that people were speculating very well could be the MLS Cup matchup, and in the current playoff setup can't happen outside of the actual MLS Cup final. Then whichever one of Miami or LAFC wins that quarterfinal game and plays one of a mix of the pool of Austin, Red Bulls, Cincinnati, Charlotte, or Seattle Sounders in a semifinal. That's I don't know what's going to happen. Oh man, I'm going to pay attention to these playoffs, even if my team is eliminated, because it has that energy of what MLS has put in so many press releases: a World Cup style form of a tournament, a World Cup style this, a World Cup style that. MLS's actual playoffs can just feel like that. It can feel like that kind of energy that they've been chasing for so long. I mean, I love that.
Yeah, you could
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say you could end up with division rivals in the final in the
precisely instead of eliminating each other due to the kind of heliocentric nature of the MLS table and the conferences up till now. You can see somebody who looks familiar from the regular season that you have not had to play again and again and again and again as much as they have under the current structure. This exercise just made me really jazzed for the possibility of the future.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I think it's good. I hope they go to something like this. As long as they figure out, I mean, I'm hoping that they dispense with the best of three first round thing at this point. I know that they want to get more home playoff games for more teams, and that was the driver of that. And maybe it's not as arduous without the international break to have that. But the basic format of this, where you get these kind of different configurations and possibilities where it isn't the same thing year after year, I think is good. I think it's fun and fresh to have this kind of mixing and matching of former East and former West teams.
I'm looking at the Phil bracket, like that Miami LAFC Nashville thing. I'm also looking at on the top side of the bracket, only two out of San Diego, Vancouver, and Columbus were going to make it into the quarterfinals. And
Yeah, yeah.
only one of those makes it to a semifinal that would, I would say, be against either Philly or NYC, and much more likely Philly at that point, frankly.
Or Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean,
They outlasted the Sounders.
they outlasted the Sounders.
That was a wild series, by the way.
It is still amazing to me that they outlasted the Sounders. I gotta say, astounding to me that they outlasted the Sounders. But in this setup, they could have met the Sounders in the MLS Cup final. Because they were on opposite sides.
Yeah, it was funny. My brother is visiting right now, and to go back to the Sounders thing for a second, he was wondering if the Sounders were still in the playoffs because he doesn't watch soccer at all. Oh, they are out, and let me show you how I did that. And so I pulled up the entire PK sequence, which he marveled at. In that the one in the first game was pretty wacky, but the one in the third game was just absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
Poor Vargas, man.
Speaking of replays, that is a replay to watch.
The confidence with which he stepped up to the kick, and then how misplaced that confidence turned out to be. It was just, oh man, poor guy. Wow, that's hard.
Well, Phil.
All right, is there anything else that we have to solve?
We've solved all the most important stuff, frankly. We've got a lot of question marks, a lot of things yet to be answered that we will certainly have answered for us by this time 2 years from now, when we are headed into the MLS winter break. Before we're left with something else to fix, I think we should probably sign off and call it a day.
You would not believe the tech issues that have gone into this particular episode. It has been a little bit cursed, but listening to this means that we have overcome those. I did want to point to one more thing real quick before we go. Something that I did earlier this week about Austin FC and their penalty kick woes in 2025, which is namely they had 2 of those during the regular season, but weirdly 6 in between Open Cup and the playoffs. So I encourage you to check that out. It's a pretty, I think, interesting little deep dive on where Austin was in their penalty kick situations. You know about the 2 that they missed. They actually missed 3 during the season. Vasquez missed 1 as well, but against the Galaxy during the regular season way back in April. But yeah, just an interesting look at how that fared compared to other teams. Just thought I would plug that while I had the opportunity to do that, since we haven't really had occasion to talk about Austin because we're just waiting for roster stuff to drop once again.
But yeah, you've been cranking out stuff, finding a lot of things to look at in retrospect now that Austin season is well done and dusted. And I guess we'll check back in when we get those roster decisions. And until then, we'll keep fantasizing about playoff formats to come.
Yeah. And shout out to Cassie on that one, who was cutting my hair when I came up with that penalty kicks idea. we hadn't been able to catch up. Like the last time I had gotten my hair cut was pre Uzuni playoff miss. We got to commiserate about that a little bit, which is always nice. It's always a good way to spend a haircut, is to talk about the failings of our designated players.
This is the best thing I've heard in the history of the 8 years I've been on this planet.